All right, everyone, welcome back to Veterans for Cannabis. And as always, I'm Jared Campbell, and with me, my big brother, Big C. Carlos, how you doing, brother?
Yo, what's going on, my peeps? You know how I'm doing, man. I say every time, I'm alive. I'm breathing on my own. I'm walking. Man, you couldn't ask for nothing better, you know? So I'm doing peachy, my brother.
Me also, brother. It's just like I said, like we always say, it's always good to be back. And so let's bring us in now. So last week, we tackled the question that got a lot more complicated the deeper we went. How much cannabis is too much? And I think Carlos and I came away realizing something important. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Because last week, I told you guys I actually tracked my own cannabis use. I found that some days I used around 3 grams, other days 4 to 5. And that immediately raises the question, is that too much? But Carlos brought up something I think is even more important than just worrying about a number. Are you still functioning? Are you handling your responsibilities? Or has cannabis reached a point where it is controlling what you do? And that's where picking this chat today is important, because there's another word we need to talk about: dependency. Can somebody use cannabis every day and not be dependent on it? What's the difference between using cannabis to manage PTSD, chronic pain, anxiety, or sleep, and reaching a point where you're feeling like you can't function without it? And here's another uncomfortable question. If you need cannabis to manage symptoms of PTSD, does that automatically mean you're dependent on cannabis, or does it mean you're just treating a condition? Because nobody looks at somebody taking their prescribed medication every day and automatically say you have an addiction. So today, we're going to go a little deeper with this. We're talking about use, tolerance, dependency, addiction, responsibility, and most importantly, self-awareness. And we're going to be just as honest about the potential problems with cannabis as we're about its potential benefits. Because Veterans for Cannabis isn't about pretending cannabis is perfect. It's about having the conversations all veterans deserve. And Carlos, as always, let me throw this at you, my brother. What's the difference between eating cannabis because it genuinely improves your quality of life and eating cannabis because you become dependent on it? All right, my brother.
All right, so I want to do something very special, right? I want to take all these words, cannabis, drugs, and I just want to focus on simple definitions: dependency, addiction, a functional addict, right? And a non-functional addict, right? Now, addiction. Let's talk about addiction, because to me, addiction and dependency means the same thing. Think about it. Okay, when you're addicted to something, you gotta have it to function. To be dependent on something, you gotta have it to function. And I'm gonna be honest with everybody here, right? If I don't take my mental health medication on a daily basis, I go haywire. My wife can tell I'm not taking my med, even if I smoke. So is that dependency, or is that a addiction? And the same thing for me can say about cannabis, right? If I don't take my meds and have my little wake and bake, my day is off. I don't feel well. I get angry. I get impatient. Does that make me an addict, or does make me dependent? Right. And the second part of that is, am I functional? Right. I'm functional regardless, with the exception that when I do not do my normal routine, I become a drill sergeant, right? And that's who I am. That's what was the military. And you know me, right? I was a very straight to the point kind of guy. I was a very one standard. I don't care if you're a fucking woman or you're a fucking man. Everybody's running the 4 miles under the, what was it, 38 minutes? I think I remember Heather, I made her run the 4 miles, and I think she was sick. She was throwing up, but I still made her run. And she came in under time, but come to find out she was pregnant with her first kid. So my apologies. Right. But my point is, I was that guy. It was one standard. We are all here. I don't give a fuck if you hangover, which was kind of normal, right? In this case, I was wrong, but that's me who I am when my mental health is not on check. I become very authoritarian, very short, and we find out that the way that is a reaction. That was a PTSD. That is my fight or flight mode being on. So I got to control everything, right? So they give me these medications, like counseling, kind of to calm that down. And what I have found out, for me, having a routine is a big part of my day. Now, what are your thoughts? Is that an addiction or is that dependency? Now,
Well,
I can tell you I'm functional. I tell you right, I do it. If you look at my grass is perfect. Okay. And payroll is done when it's done. But does that make me functionable? Well, that makes me functionable. Am I addicted or am I dependent?
it's kind of interesting to have these conversations because when you were talking, I was thinking about my own time in the military. And when I was in the military, I'll admit here, right here, I was a drunk. Okay. I wasn't a very good soldier. I was a drunk. Right. I made a lot of mistakes throughout my military service, things I regret, things I wish I could have do overs. But what I can say is when I was drinking in the military, I was drinking not because I enjoyed it. I was drinking because I was escaping. I was escaping all the stuff that I had in my life. And so I had to ask myself, was I addicted? Was I dependent? Right? Because I never enjoyed drinking. I did it to escape. And I
Mhm.
know there was one night you took care of me because Heather called you. I think she was in Oregon at the time. And
Okay.
I don't know if you probably don't remember, but I was drinking. But
My brain is fucked up. Yeah, my bad. But
but
what
no,
happened?
but you did take care of me one night, so thank you for that. But now, as we fast forward to my cannabis use, I look at it kind of like you do, and I want to be honest and say I enjoy cannabis. Like I enjoy it, just like you said. I mean, I enjoy smoking cannabis. I like to sit on my porch and enjoy my cannabis. And like I think you and I we function. I
Yeah.
mean, your yard looks amazing. I go to the gym 3 days a week, right? Working out. So the question is, are we addicted, dependent, or we're enjoying something that we enjoy,
Mhm.
right? But it also helps us with symptoms, right? So I don't know. It's a great question because I'll bring it back to you
Yeah.
because I know I enjoy smoking cannabis. I do, but I don't know how to explain it. But
I mean, I do too. You touch on very important things because I was a drinker too, and I'm a happy drunk. So my problem was that I was very controlling during my day. I want my platoon to be the best. We keep stuff inside. I control what happened in my little bubble, and I did it. And I think. But anyways, I used to drink on my way home. So by the time I'm home, I'm relaxed and I'm happy. Now let me explain something real quick. Okay, I need to go back to explain my background. I was in the army for 17 years. Okay, I deployed to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. I joined in 2002, deployed in 2003. I was a fueler. I used to pump fuel. But luckily for me, I was assigned to 2nd Battalion 6th Infantry Regiment, HAC Infantry, right? I was in the headquarters. That means that as they were pushing forward, we were pushing with them. Each company had a fielder assigned to them. Then you got headquarters. I think Charlie Company was the first wave with one of our fielders who actually something happened on the way there. Anyways, so that became that, I think driving to traffic really, really kills me because I used to drive my filler, through IDs and through Baghdad just to go to an OP observation point to fuel some Humvees of generators, RPGs taping up I mean, it was insane life, right? And the first deployment was just wild, right? It was, the best way to describe it, the Wild West. Okay. A lot of motors, a lot of artillery, a lot of stuff coming in. Not too many IDs yet in early 2003. There was a lot of direct fire and indirect fire, but it was very unconventional. We lived in the street. We have holes in our pants, bullet holes. I'm not messing with you, right? Anyways, so we redeployed after 16 months. We redeployed back to Germany. Yeah, you heard me, 16 months. In between then, my son was born with a collapsed lung. I couldn't go home because guess what? I was in Baghdad, right? Camp Cuervo, Camp Mule Skinner to begin with. We redeployed back. And about less than a year later, we went back. But this time, we didn't went back as fillers. We went back as just a part of headquarters company. And we were trained through, we went to the field. We were trained not on field tactics, on basic combat operations, supporting. I mean, I'm not going to say that we were kicking doors, but I will say that actually we can say we were kicking doors because we Fallujah was fun. Anyways, right? So come back. I went to, in my opinion, after my second deployment, which we lost quite a bit of people, kind of one of my moral injuries, right? That I'm dealing with. That's when I met you. I went in 2007, went to Fort Lee, Virginia. And I honestly believe it was one of the most stressful environments I've ever been in my life. I mean, coming from two back-to-back deployments, like real shit, real deployments, right? To you cannot even smoke new trainees. It's like, motherfuckers, who in the fuck you think you're talking to, right? Like, right? So, and that's kind of what we made. I don't know if you remember me being angry, but I felt very intense. I think I got into a fight with First Sergeant Pie one time in his office, right? Because and he was control. He wanted to give like one of my guys an Article 15. I was arguing against it just because I want to control the thing, right? Then I went to Fort Bragg, and Fort Bragg was a little more homey, a little more chaotic. I was more at home, right? But I never did well in a base support battalion, never did get, so where I did well was where the chaos was. So, they got me into the brigade command. It was fun, working in a brigade command. We deployed. I think we were overseeing the Operation New Dawn with Department of State. Being HEC command, you got exposed to, doing a lot of, the third deployment was honestly just a freaking party, right? It was just stupid. There was no, I don't remember no big, I think we got murder once or twice, maybe an IED India once. I think one guy got killed, but second deployment wasn't bad. But by this time, I think I was in my early 30s. My body was deteriorating. I think I was taking pain meds for my bad back. I was ambience. I used to hate them fuckers. Used to sleep. And then you got alcohol, right? Then the army said, hey, I think you need a break. You broke your leg, so let's send you to recruiting command. Yay! Now, recruiting command was fun. Okay, I got recruiting command was very fun, but it was also very stressful. It still was the army, which means there was a lot of drinking, and and I was at home, so whatever. But at that time, I think I was starting to freak out with the amount of traffic in Milwaukee, right? So I ETS went to the reserves, and I was in a drill sergeant unit. Man, I lost my shit. I couldn't handle the reserves. So I went through a medical retirement, and I got medically retired at 15. When I went through my VA thing, my records indicate everything that I'm saying was legit. I've been jumping out of planes, rappelling out of helicopters, getting hit by IEDs, just doing things that is going to deteriorate your body, right? So by the age of 39, my body was just a shit show. I got 100% disabled, but I thought, I still can be good up here. So I went to work. I went to work as a recruiter. That didn't work out. I was getting freaked out people because they couldn't show up to work. That used to drive me nuts. I'm trying to get you a job and you cannot get to work, right? So I lost my shit. I had to take a break. During that time, my dad was dying. I lost my dad, and then I went right back to work to another stressful job. I was the program director for a veteran upper bound program. Now, that became very political, and I do not, again, my team was my team. I did not like outside people coming into my business, right? That became, I think I'm not gonna say it was partly my fault, but I became very emotional, and I left the job because I felt that I was losing it, and I think I felt that I was suicidal, and I think I needed to get help. Come to find out, I needed to get help because I haven't processed anything that I've been through in my life. Okay. Not the easiest childhood. Okay. Very chaotic childhood. Went to a chaotic time in my life where it was the military. Okay. From being a private to being a 2 times combat deployment within 3 years to going to a environment where it's like, oh, you gotta be careful what you say around here. Fuck you, bitches. Sorry. To a I'm back to the real army, to like my brain was not doing well. Anyways, my point is that that chaos always makes me be on guard. It's called my frontal lobe, my fight or flight, right? And that's why they gave me medication in the VA for me to control that. Okay. But what ended up happening in the beginning is they was taking the amount of medication and they were piling them. I'm telling you, I used to take 3 or 4 different kind of meds. Now, there was nothing bad. I think the greatest doctor I had, Dr. Greg Burrick from the VA, because he was able to kind of like lead me out of a lot of the meds and focusing me in 2 of them, right? And then from there, I went to another doctor after Greg went to the medical college. We didn't change nothing. They tried some other stuff that I actually stopped. I go like, I don't want this. I stay with what Dr. Greg Berek said. And then for sleeping, because they have gave me something anitriptyline, which was a godsend, right? But the doses came too high to the point that I became zombie-like. So I used to hate taking it. And I met this guy, and this guy said, hey, take this gummy, and this gummy changed my life. I slept for 12 hours, and guess what? I woke up feeling like a champ. Cannabis changed my life. I was able to get out of sleeping meds. I was able to stop drinking. I was able to do all this craziness. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going back drinking. What I'm saying is, if I do not complete my routine in the day, I feel that I'm not in control. Now, with all that explanation, does that make me an addict or does that make me a dependent? I will, I will argue that will make me an addict.
Yeah.
So is it the problem of definition or is it the problem of the way we look at things?
Interesting point. Because I was thinking about my own story, but I'm looking at our time, and I was thinking I could get into my own story next week. But you brought up something about thoughts of suicide, and I've had plenty of those. I tried to attempt to take my own life when I was in Iraq in 2005, and I think next week I'll talk a little bit. I'll talk a little more about my story, and then bring it in with cannabis, just like you did. But you brought up some interesting points there. So
Yeah, so yeah, you know, and again, I'm not going to compare myself with an actual addict, because it is two different lives, two different perspectives, right? My perspective was shaped by chaos. I do well in chaos, but chaos is not good for me and my family, right? Now, when we look at a person, who's a different type of addict, right? Who is physically and mentally dependent on, a substance. What's the difference between me and him? He could have a messed up childhood and this is his peace. Then me, it's like, okay, I know I can do well. Thankfully, cannabis is being accepted socially in a sense, right? But what is the difference between this guy and me? Aside of what we take in.
here's something. When I smoke cannabis, it stops the voices that are in my head. Because it stops the voices in my head, does that make me an addict or does it make me dependent?
I mean, that could also ask, are you a schizophrenic? I mean, my point is, because that happened to me too, right? My point is that, and I think I'm gonna share this video with Dr. Greg Burry, because this is an interesting conversation. I don't know what's the answer, right? All I know is that, we were talking about earlier, I live near a National Guard aviation base, and I often hear Blackhawks above me, and it
Mhm.
makes me feel good, right? I'm in the woods, I got my everything is secure, I'm good, and I don't know, it's just the way I'm shaped. What is that called? What is that? You know, and the kind of I just enjoy smoking, and I sit down with a cup of coffee. It's 11 o'clock at night. It's raining. Just to let you guys know, it's pouring thunderstorm. And I'm just enjoying the birds and enjoying the day. This is my peace. Again, the question is, what this makes me. And again, what is too much for you or for me? I don't know. So what are your thoughts? We got About 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, my thoughts are this. I think this is a very interesting conversation because for me, I'm thinking how I would fit into all of this as much as I use on a daily basis. But I don't really have a whole lot more. Maybe I can be ready again next week. But
Okay.
you brought up a lot
Now,
of good points. Yeah.
to be clear, real quick, how much you think you use a day?
Me, on average,
Yes.
about five
Yes.
grams a day. But I was
Five
just gonna say
grams?
5 gram. Yeah.
I am about 4 grams a day, give or take. Maybe three, maybe three. But, that's mostly in the morning and at night before I go to bed.
Right.
Everything that happens in between, my grass is cut, my bills are paid,
Right. Mhm.
boom, right? And I'm kind of retired. So hopefully there's not a lot of judgment. God bless everybody. That's my story. No hate, please. Different views, man.
Everyone, I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for listening. Next week, I'll talk a little bit more about my story and we'll get a little more into that. Other than that, I just want to thank all the listeners, whether you're on whether you're on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble. Thank you all again for the love and support. Please continue to like, share, subscribe,
Mhm.
even repost, remix. It helps the algorithm for us. Please engage. And if anybody wants to come on, please hit us up. Let us know so we can get you the link and you can come on and just have a chat with us. That's all I have, Carlos. I said, everyone
Hey,
have a
like I said,
safe weekend. That's all I have.
like I said, everybody have a blessed day. Remember, you're accountable for yourself, so don't be a dumbass. God bless everybody.
Peace. God bless everyone. All right.